morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and on the show today, US President Donald Trump has announced the formation of a Gaza Board of Peace, a key phase 2 element of a US-backed plan to end the war in the Palestinian territory. He added that the members of the body will be announced shortly. We're going to bring you all the details on that front. Stay tuned.
And also on the show, UN Security Council held an emergency meeting on Iran's deadly protest at the request of the United States, while President Donald Trump kept possible action unclear. Now, on the other hand, Tehran has struck a conciliatory tone ahead of talks following U.S. warnings over continued killings and executions during Iran's nationwide crackdown. We'll get you all the details on that story as well from the ground. Let's begin with the headlines.
White House says Iran halted 800 planned executions under pressure from President Donald Trump over its crackdown on protests, while warning that U.S. military action remains an option if Tehran resumes killing protesters.
Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presents her Nobel Peace Prize medal to Donald Trump during a White House meeting, calling it a gesture recognizing his unique commitment to freedom.
U.S. forces seized another oil tanker, Veronica, in the Caribbean, the sixth ship which was captured since President Trump announced a blockade to prevent sanctioned vessels going to or from Venezuela.
White House says deployment of European troops in Greenland does not impact Donald Trump's plans to take control of the Arctic island from Denmark. Several NATO countries sent personnel for Arctic endurance exercise.
U.S. President Donald Trump announces the creation of a Gaza Board of Peace as part of Phase 2 of U.S.-backed plan to end the war, saying the board has been formed and its members will be named soon.
Former UK Conservative Minister Robert Jenrick joins hard-right Reform UK party hours after being sacked by Tory leader Kemi Badenoch for allegedly plotting the move as Reform continues to lead in polls.
Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro transferred to a prison with a bigger cell to serve his 27-year sentence. The move comes after complaints from his family about the poor conditions at the previous detention site.
South Korean court to rule today on whether former President Yoon Suk-yeol obstructed justice over his 2024 failed martial law declaration, the first of several verdicts he faces for actions linked to crisis and aftermath.
U.S. has signed a major trade deal with Taiwan, cutting tariffs to 15% while securing at least $250 billion in new Taiwanese investment. The agreement aims to reshore semiconductors manufacturing and strengthen America's tech supply chain.
Now, a senior UN official has warned that threats of military action against Iran, like those made by U.S. President Donald Trump, increase volatility in the protest-torn country.
And the US-backed terror-based rights group says that death toll from the violent crackdown on protesters has surpassed 2,600. Until Wednesday, the United States was threatening military action against Iran should it carry out the death penalty against people arrested over the protests. And Washington's envoy to the UN renewed the threats on Thursday, saying all options were still on the table.
Colleagues, let me be clear. President Trump is a man of action, not endless talk like we see at the United Nations. He has made it clear all options are on the table to stop the slaughter. And no one should know that better than the leadership of the Iranian regime.
Iran's representative at the meeting, Ghalami Hussein Thursday, accused Washington of exploitation of peaceful protest for geopolitical purposes.
Albeit reportedly at a smaller scale than
Iran seeks neither escalation nor confrontation. However, any act of aggression, direct or indirect, will be met with a decisive, proportionate, and lawful response under Article 51 of the Charter. This is not a threat. It is a statement of legal reality. Responsibility for all consequences will rest solely with those who initiate such unlawful acts.
Iranian journalist and political dissident Masih Ali-Nejad broke down in tears at the meeting. As she read out the names of the people she said were killed during protests in Iran.
Again and again, cannot be reformed. The Iranian people are asking the world to help through actions, not back-to-back meetings and empty condemnation. We don't need empty words. People of Iran are asking the Islamic Republic are telling you the Islamic Republic no longer can be reformed.
The nationwide shutdown of internet by authorities in Iran has now lasted a full week. Activists fear it is aimed at masking the true scale of crackdown on the protests.
Well, images show light traffic in Tehran as residents go about their routines following a wave of some of the biggest anti-government protests. Iranians arriving in Turkey through a land border said that the protests have largely subsided, adding that US should not intervene.
There is chaos in Iran. There is war in Iran. It has stopped now, but it is unclear what will happen. US President Donald Trump said he would intervene in Iran, but he can't. Also, we don't have internet. We are not informed. We cannot learn what is happening inside.
He, Trump, cannot do anything. When we are united in Muslim countries, they cannot do anything. There is nothing going on anyway. There was turmoil for a few days, but everything has ended.
White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt has said Trump is closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Iran, adding that he and his team have warned Iran there would be grave consequences if killings linked to its crackdown continue.
Development, housing, and other resources for young people transitioning from foster care to adulthood. This is part.
And for more on this, we're now being joined by retired Colonel Davis B.J. Roches from Washington, D.C. He's a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies at National Defense University. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Sir, President Trump earlier said that he's going to adopt a watch and see approach, but now we're hearing at the UN that all options are back on the table. Now, I want to understand from you, was US military intervention ever really off the table? And what measures is US considering at this point in time?
Well, I don't know what's being considered. I don't think that military action was ever truly off the table. But President Trump, there's two things to bear in mind. The first one is that President Trump, in spite of what many people think, is not a fan of military action. He prefers to use economic power as his lever. So, for example, we saw today that Ali Larijani, who was the secretary of the Iranian National Security Council, was sanctioned. We're seeing stepped up sanctions of various Iranian banks and oil transiting entities. Another ship in the Shadow Fleet was seized, although from Venezuela, but there's usually an Iranian connection with these ships. So what he wants, his preferred mode of action is to use economic power. Why hasn't there been military action? Well, I think a big part of that is we just didn't have the assets in place. So we have the ability to launch a strike against Iran, but Iran has threatened that if the United States were to strike it, it would strike not against the United States, but rather against commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea, and against the Arab states that are friendly with the United States in the region. So we just don't have assets there the way we did, say, in June. We don't have any aircraft carriers. Right now, the USS Abraham Lincoln is sailing from the South China Sea reportedly towards the Arabian Sea. I think that once it is in place and we see a reposition of other aerial assets, if the Iranian regime doesn't change its behavior, the possibility of a military strike is very real.
That's an interesting point you point out, because when it comes to any escalation that might happen, of course, these are Arab states we're looking at, because Iran has threatened to attack the U.S. bases in all these Arab states. Then what are the other ways, like sanctions? How important or how effective would these sanctions be, according to you? And would there be a time where, there would be a possibility that the U.S. might take military strikes?
Yeah. So first off, Iran has threatened to attack the Arab states, not just American facilities within Arab states. So it's important to bear in mind. So the thing about sanctions is the theory, and I think Trump believes this, that ultimately economic collapse, when you deal with a corrupt regime like you have in Iran, you apply economic pressure, and the power holders within the regime inevitably turn from defending a regime to try to secure their own money and their family's safety overseas. So there have been reports that Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the supreme leader, who some think is being put forward to be the next supreme leader, has moved over $1.5 billion to an escrow account in the UAE. That is kind of what Trump wants to see, is the regime elites fighting with each other over money and basically looking after their own interest, and then the regime implodes. To a certain extent, that's what happened in Syria, where really the regime was being underwritten by Captagon sales that were increasingly concentrated within the Assad family, most notably in Bashar al-Assad's brother Maher. The problem with this economic lever of power is that it is not very responsive. It takes a very long time to have effect. And if the ruling elite is extremely ideologically motivated, or if they feel that they don't have an option in exile, they may fight a lot longer than people want them to.
And also talking about nuclear talks, which they have been, they were taking place last year. Somehow there was no outbreak on that. But do you think nuclear talks would be the other thing that Trump might be looking for to in talks with Iran?
I don't think he wants nuclear talks just for the sake of nuclear talks. I mean, I think that he knows where the talks run into a brick wall, which is Iran insists on having enrichment and Trump insists that Iran cannot have enrichment. So I don't think there's any, I don't think that Trump sees any value just in having talks, because he kind of knows what the Iranian position is. So unless the Iranians signal to him through a back channel, that could be the Omanis, or usually it's the Omanis, but it could be any number of other countries, unless they signal that they're willing to give up on having a domestic enrichment capability, I don't think Trump will see any value in nuclear talks. They're just likely to be, quite frankly, time wasting. And they know that, the Iranians know the American political system. They think that after the midterm elections, Trump will be weaker, so they want to wait him out.
All right. Well, that's an interesting take from your side. Thank you so much. For always a pleasure having you on the show and your analysis. Listen to it.
Thank you. It's an honor.
All right, and moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump has hailed opposition Venezuelan leader Maria Corina Machado for her gesture in presenting him with her Nobel Peace Prize medal.
And the move comes as Venezuela faces a turbulent political transition following the capture of leader Nicolas Maduro on January 3rd. Now, taking to social media after meeting Machado, Trump said, and I'm quoting here, "It was my great honor to meet Maria Corina Machado of Venezuela. She is a wonderful woman who has been through so much. Maria presented me with her Nobel Prize for the work I have done. Such a wonderful gesture of mutual respect.
Well, Machado was fighting for her political future. After meeting Trump, said that a gesture to present Trump with her Nobel medal was intended as recognition of his commitment to the freedom of the Venezuelan people.
I was telling President Trump that 200 years ago, General Lafayette, the French officer who helped the United States in the Revolutionary War against Britain, gave Simon Bolivar a medal with the face of President George Washington, and since then, Bolivar never parted with it. He kept the medal until the day he died. Exactly 200 years later, the heirs, the people of Bolivar, present the President of the United States with a medal in return.
Machado received the Nobel Peace Prize last December in Oslo after arriving in the country following her daring escape from Venezuela by boat. She dedicated her win to Trump, who had also campaigned for it. Earlier, after she announced her intentions to give Trump the award, the Norwegian Nobel Institute had said that honor remained hers and that the prize cannot be transferred, shared, or revoked.
First of all, I was very impressed by how clearly he understands the situation in Venezuela, how much he cares about the suffering of the Venezuelan people, and I assured him that Venezuelan society is united, that today more than 90% of Venezuelans want the same thing. We want to live with freedom, with dignity, with justice. We want our children back home, and for that to happen, there must be democracy and freedom.
Well, following a meeting with Trump, the Venezuelan opposition leader also met a bipartisan group of U.S. senators, including Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin and Senator Jeanne Shaheen.
Meanwhile, U.S. forces in the Caribbean have seized another sanctioned oil tanker, which the Trump administration says is linked to Venezuela.
Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, declared that the nation faced serious threats, adding that she does not fear diplomatic confrontation with the United States.
There's a stain on our relations. When they crossed the red line, they attacked, assaulted, killed, invaded, and kidnapped President Maduro and the First Lady. Venezuela is under threat. All of Venezuela is under threat. And that is why I call for national unity so that, with sovereignty at the forefront, we can fight the diplomatic battle.
The U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the formation of a Board of Peace for Gaza and has described it as a key component of Phase 2 of a U.S.-backed plan to end the war in the Palestinian territory.
Now, in a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump said that it was his great honor to establish the body, adding that the members would be named shortly.
The announcement comes as the U.S.-backed Gaza ceasefire framework moves into its second phase despite unresolved disputes between Israel and Hamas. Israel continues to insist on Hamas's full disarmament, a demand that the group has refused to accept. Israel is yet to clearly commit to a complete military withdrawal from Gaza.
A Palestinian technocratic committee unveiled it this week is expected to oversee the day-to-day governance of post-war Gaza. But broader political and security questions remain unresolved.
Now, U.S. West Asia envoy Steve Witkoff has said that as chair of the Board of Peace, he is backing a newly appointed Palestinian technocratic committee to govern Gaza during its transition with support from Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. He said Phase 2 aims to fully demilitarize and rebuild Gaza, including the disarmament of all unauthorized armed groups, and proposes deploying an international stabilization force to secure the territory and train vetted Palestinian police.
For Palestinians, however, the key demand remains Israel's full military withdrawal, a step included in the framework but without any clear timeline.
Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham has confirmed he will travel to Israel to meet Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling it a crucial moment in West Asian history. In a post on social media, Graham praised what he described as one of the strongest alliances in the history of U.S.-Israel relations and said he hoped it would deliver results soon.
As diplomatic efforts continue, the United Nations has issued a stark warning on conditions inside Gaza. A senior UN official has urged the international community to accelerate reconstruction, describing the living conditions as inhumane. Jorge Moreira de Silva, head of the UN Office for Project Services, said the scale of destruction he witnessed during a visit to Gaza was unlike anything he had imagined.
Well, on the ground, the humanitarian crisis continues to deepen. Displaced Palestinians along Gaza City's western coast are struggling to salvage what little remains of their belongings. And this as strong winds batter makeshift tents.
The tents and tarpaulins collapsed on us due to the strong storm. I took my children from my tent to my neighbor's tent, but it was no use. Our tents and mattresses are soaked, and my daughter is still sleeping under the tent. The situation is very difficult.
And US President Donald Trump continues to press his claim to Greenland, with his aims to wrest control of the mineral-rich Arctic island growing stronger by the day.
And the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said the talks between U.S. officials and representatives from Denmark and Greenland were largely productive. However, she added that European military deployments to the semi-autonomous Danish territory would not deter Trump from pursuing its control.
Those talks will take place, I'm told, every 2 to 3 weeks. So this is a conversation the administration intends to keep having with the Danes and with the respected delegation from Greenland. But the president has made his priority quite clear. He wants the United States to acquire Greenland. He thinks it's in our best national security to do that.
Now, responding to Leavitt, Denmark has ruled out any U.S. acquisition of Greenland, with its foreign minister saying, and I'm quoting here, "This is out of the question." Denmark foreign minister said not only does it run counter to international rules, but also infringes on sovereignty.
However, Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, insisted that dialogue and diplomacy are the right way forward. He hailed the fact that dialogue was now underway.
Trump's special envoy to Greenland, Louisiana government Jeff Landry, said that he plans to travel to Washington for meetings as several NATO allies move forces into Greenland in a show of solidarity with Denmark.
Now, a small French military contingent has reportedly arrived in Greenland's capital, Nuuk. The limited deployment has happened from countries like Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the Netherlands, as well as UK, among others.
French President Emmanuel Macron said that the initial contingent would be reinforced soon with land, air, and sea assets. On the other hand, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that the European Union has a strategic responsibility in Greenland, adding that the NATO allies are perfectly capable of defending the territory.
NATO, the NATO allies, the European countries, are completely capable of defending their territory against any threat, wherever it may come from. This is the spirit in which, I believe, our Danish colleague, our Greenlandic colleague, expressed themselves yesterday in Washington, and it is important that a dialogue can take place between allies. I believe this is what was decided at the end of yesterday's meeting regarding the exact nature of these threats, which need to be determined.
Now, time and again, President Trump has insisted that U.S. needs to own Greenland for security reasons, and more precisely, to prevent Russia and China from doing so.
Debunking Trump's claim as a myth, Moscow indicated that it poses no threat to Greenland whatsoever, despite NATO countries recently announcing troop deployments on the island.
Security strategy. It turned out that part of the Danish kingdom's Now, after the recent publication of the US National Security Strategy, it turned out that part of the Danish kingdom's territory, which is located in the Western Hemisphere, has been included in Washington's arbitrarily defined sphere of US interests. And of course, against this backdrop, the myth of some kind of Russian threat, rigorously promoted by Denmark and other members of the European Union and NATO for many years, is especially hypocritical.
And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break on World DNA.
But don't go anywhere. Lots lined up on the other side of World DNA. Keep watching Beyond World is One.
राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100. Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
The world's most powerful minds gather. Decisions that shape our future are made. From the Swiss Alps to you. Starting January 19th, WION will deep dive into the significance of what global leaders are deliberating at the World Economic Forum. The coverage will feature key roundtable discussions every day with top analysts at WION's headquarters. Stay tuned as we break down key themes from the Davos Forum to make it simple and engaging for you, only on WION.
This is our brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of the southern Indian state.
By blending special stories of the day, breaking alerts and cultural vignettes. From the 7 days.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes, and millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Vielleicht nur als Impulsland.
welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond World is One, and this is World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague, Diksha Visla. Let's begin with the headlines.
Donald Trump praises Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado after she presents him with her Nobel Peace Prize medal during White House meeting, calling her a wonderful woman and the gesture one of mutual respect.
Iran's deputy UN ambassador says that Iran does not seek escalation and warns any aggression will be met with a proportionate response, while accusing U.S. ambassador of spreading false information to conceal America's role in unrest in Iran.
U.S. forces seize another oil tanker, Veronica, in the Caribbean, the sixth ship which is captured since President Trump announced a blockade to prevent sanctioned vessels going to and from Venezuela.
White House says deployment of European troops in Greenland does not impact Donald Trump's plans to take control of the Arctic island from Denmark. Several NATO countries send personnel for Arctic endurance exercise.
U.S. President Donald Trump announces the creation of a Gaza board of peace as part of phase 2 of a U.S.-backed plan to end the war, saying the board was formed and its members will be named soon.
Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, transferred to a prison with bigger cell to serve his 27-year sentence. The move comes after complaints from his family about poor conditions at the previous detention site.
.300 firefighters and 85 fire trucks deployed to tackle major fire in Seoul's Gangnam district. 47 residents have been evacuated. Authorities raise alert due to concerns of the fire spreading. No casualties have been reported so far.
U.S. weekly jobless claims unexpectedly fell to 198,000 below forecast, but economists say seasonal adjustments likely explain the drop. Layoffs remain low while hiring stays sluggish, keeping the labor market in a holding pattern.
U.S. President Donald Trump hosts Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers at the White House. Trump praises back-to-back champions, calling them one of the greatest hockey teams ever. Counting of votes for the Mumbai Municipal Corporation, BMC polls will begin at 10 a.m. local time across 23 designated counting centres in Mumbai.
Now, the elections were held along with 28 local bodies of Maharashtra on 15th of January. The Bharatiya Janata Party-led Mahayuti is locked in a key battle with the United Thackeray cousins Raj and Uddhav.
Now, for control of the cash-rich BMC, which has an annual budget of more than 74,000 crore rupees, the two factions of NCP, Congress, Samajwadi Party, among others, are also in the fray.
Now, according to the BMC, the counting process will be conducted in strict compliance with the guidelines of the Election Commission of India and the Model Code of Conduct, with elaborate arrangements in place to ensure security, traffic management, and maintenance of law and order.
Now, exit polls have predicted a clear sweep for the BJP-Shiv Sena alliance and a defeat of the Shiv Sena UBT MNS, according to My Access India exit polls. Now, Shiv Sena alliance is poised to win 131 to 151 seats, while Shiv Sena UBT MNS NCP-SP is expected to win 58 to 68 seats. According to the Jubilant Data Studio exit polls, the BJP-Shiv Sena alliance is likely to win between 127 to 155 seats in Mumbai. The Shiv Sena UBT-MNS NCP-SP alliance could win seats in the range of 44 to 64. The Congress-led alliance could win 16 to 25 seats.
Now, the BMC elections were marred by a significant controversy following allegations over the use of indelible ink to mark voters' fingers. The Thackeray cousins claim the indelible ink used can be easily removed.
Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis reacted to the allegations by attempting to wipe off his own ink mark. However, the State Election Commission denied these claims and said, stating that the ink is of good quality and hard to remove. And for more, our principal correspondent Disha Yadav is joining us live from the Accounting Centre in Mulund, Mumbai. Disha, what's the latest you're picking from the ground and what preparations are underway ahead of the counting?
Well, good morning to you and the voters who are watching us here on WION. We are at a counting centre in the eastern suburbs of Mumbai, and as we can see, the preparations are already underway to ensure that the counting process is done in a smooth manner without any disruptions. It is under heavy security deployment, and 100 meters around this counting centre, no vehicles are allowed to park as well. And as we can see, the preparations is currently underway under full security. Only the authorized people with election passes are allowed to step into the counting centre, and it will start at 10 a.m. Across 23 designated counting centres in Mumbai. And what we understand, there are about 2,300 officials, the trained staff who have been involved in the counting process, and over 2,000 security personnel deployed right outside. You can see the barricading also that has been done right opposite the counting centre as well, because this specific area has to be monitored and watched very closely to avoid any sort of disruptions, is what we understand. Apart from that, as far as the counting, this time around it will be a little bit different, because the BMC has stated that this time around phase-wise counting will take place. So unlike previous elections, all the wards counting started simultaneously, but this time around it will start at 2 wards at a time. So every counting centre will start only with 2 wards instead of all the 227 wards. So this could probably delay the early trends and the results that were expected by say 12 p.m. So that is something which will find a delay. Another surprisingly thing is that the BMC is yet to announce the final voter turnout. So at 12 a.m. last night, that is the final communication that we have received from the administration, that the final voter turnout could be anywhere between 53 to 55%, but we are still awaiting the exact final voter turnout that Mumbai really happened. And as far as the counting is concerned, it is going to be a very big day, because it is going to be about which party will at the end of the day end up ruling Mumbai, because this is India's richest civic body. It has an annual budget of over 75,000 crore rupees, much higher than many Indian states. Whether it will be the Thackeray brothers that will reclaim their heritage, or whether it will be BJP that is going to make a strong comeback, that is something which will be known by end of the day today.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how this is literally a crash-rich BMC election that's happening with that kind of like budget. How do you analyze, what does it look like on the ground? How do you analyze this, the Bharatiya Janata Party-led Mahayuti locked in this key battle with the United Thackeray cousins, Raj and Uddhav?
Well, honestly, I have been a Mumbaiker since birth. So, and what I've seen in my last 30 years of life is that in 25 years itself, it was the Shiv Sena that's led by Uddhav Thackeray. They have always controlled and ruled the BMC, Mumbai, the richest civic body. And this time around, of course, the elections were quite different because it happened after a delay of 4 long years. So a lot of political equations have changed. The entire political landscape has changed in the past couple of years, and that is why the Thackeray brothers had to reunite to give a strong response to the Mahayuti BJP-led government. So obviously it is going to be a tough battle. It is a high-stake battle to watch out for because the Thackeray brothers are trying to reclaim their heritage. They want to retain that power and position here in Mumbai. However, the BJP is trying for a strong comeback, and that is what even the exit polls have really predicted, that the BJP likely will win as a majority party. Remember, out of 227 seats, 114 is the majority mark. So if any party or alliance that gets this number is clearly winning the BMC election. So
Disha,
it is going to be
emerge in the coming hours. But for now, thank you so much for getting us all those details. That was our principal correspondent Disha Yadav joining us from Mumbai.
Well, 7 months after India struck terror targets deep inside Pakistan, a top terror commander has openly admitted that India's strikes caused damage to a terror hideout in Muridke.
Now, in an on-camera admission, Lashkar-e-Toiba commander Abdul Rauf has confessed that the mosque and training facility were destroyed and collapsed during the Indian attacks on 6th and 7th of May. Rauf said that they cannot even sit there today because of the extent of the damage, calling it a very big attack.
6 और 7 मई को जो हुआ ये मस्जिद आज जहां हम नहीं बैठ सके वो खत्म हो गई, गिर गई। बहुत बड़ा हमला था, अल्लाह ताला ने बचा लिया, हिफाजत की। जंग मुरीदे की थी। मोदी ने कहा हमने तो दहशतगर्दों के ठिकानों पे हमला किया और पाकिस्तान ने हम ही पे हमला कर दिया।
Now, after the Pahalgam terror attack in April 2025, India launched Operation Sindoor. The targets were carefully chosen terror hideouts and training facilities inside Pakistan. Among the targets destroyed was terror group's nerve center in Muridke.
In other news, Myanmar's junta says it dismantled 3 massive meth laboratories in the country.
And this is the highly fortified labs that were created in northeastern Shan state in a forested area. Now, the village-sized complexes had internal roads, secluded living quarters, and elaborate power and water systems. Signs of rushed exit were visible. There were gas masks lying on the floor, and the machines were not turned off. Police say barrels were filled with crystal meth, ready to be processed.
This is the biggest seizure and destruction by an anti-drugs operation in our history.
The drug bust comes amid Myanmar's ongoing civil war. Shan state has changed hands since late 2023. The military says that the labs were discovered while retaking lost territory. Authorities estimate the sites accounted for a part of the 37 tons of meth which was seized in 2025.
There is significant evidence that at least 1/3 of seized drugs were produced from these places.
The United Nations calls Myanmar the world's largest meth producer. Meth is cheap to curate and transport. Analysts say the conflict has fueled its production with drug profits helping fund the war. And India's trade deficit widened slightly in the December quarter, but remained under control.
A strong export pivot towards Asia and Africa is helping offset tariff pressures, and a weaker rupee is, of course, also helping the case. Now, the country's trade deficit in December edged up to $25 billion from $24.5 billion in November. Despite the marginal widening, the gap remains significantly lower than the record high of $42 billion, which was seen in October. A sharp correction in gold imports since October and a slight improvement in exports have been key factors behind this improvement. The oil trade balance also continues to improve.
Now, one key takeaway from the data is that export growth has begun to normalize despite the steep 50% tariff on exports to the United States. The shipments to the U.S. contracted 1.8% to $6.89 billion in December. However, the total exports to the U.S. stood at $65.87 billion during April-December, a 9.7% growth.
Now, recent trends point to strong diversification efforts. With notable gains in exports to Africa and North Asia, China is emerging as a more significant export destination for India. Historically, India has maintained a substantial trade deficit with China. However, recent data indicates a positive shift. With exports to China rising by around 20% year-on-year in 2025, the country's total export share to China remains quite modest at 4% as compared to United States' dominant 20%. Still, the latest development marks an encouraging step towards reducing India's reliance on Western markets.
Now, further signs of Asia-centric diversification are evident in the growth of exports to Taiwan, which increased by 10%. While Taiwan is not yet a major export partner, the uptick suggests deeper integration of India's technology supply chains within Asia. That it reinforces the country's strategic pivot towards regional trade partnerships.
Well, in products, electronics has emerged as the standout performer in India's export basket. Electronics shipment grew by 40% year-on-year in 2025 until November, outpacing other sectors by a wide margin. Now, a key catalyst behind this surge is the smartphone-focused production, which is linked incentive scheme. The plan has attracted global giants like Apple and Samsung alongside domestic players. Well, these companies are using the incentives to ramp up production and ship more devices overseas. Apple, for instance, has turned India into its second iPhone hub after China.
On the flip side, petroleum exports aren't looking as bright. They are down 15% year-on-year in 2025 until November. The advantage Indian refiners had from cheap Russian crude is fading fast due to U.S. sanctions. Even when that discount was in play, exports were already sliding. Now that the cost edge is gone, the decline could accelerate.
And Australia has taken swift action following its world-first ban on social media for under-16s.
And according to the e-Safety Commissioner, the country's internet regulator, nearly 5 million teenage accounts have been deactivated across platforms in just a month. The move affects TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Threads, X, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick.
The e-Safety Commissioner said that about 4.7 million accounts held by under-16s have been removed to comply with the law that came into effect on December 10, 2025. Now, some platforms began closing under-16 accounts weeks before the deadline. The figures show that some platforms are taking the ban seriously, as non-compliance could lead to fines up to $33 million. Meta has removed around 550,000 accounts from Instagram, Facebook, and Threads.
Now, e-Safety Commissioner Julie Inman Grant has said that effective age verification takes time to bed down. But initial feedback from third-party software vendors suggests that the rollout has been smooth, supported by public education before the ban.
Some smaller social media apps reported a surge of downloads in Australia before December. But the e-Safety Commissioner said that these spikes have not led to sustained usage. The Australian government said a study with mental health experts is going to track the ban's impact over several years from now.
Well, last month, Reddit challenged Australia's under-16 social media ban in court. The government said it will defend the law. The ban implemented by Australia is being closely watched by other countries considering similar age restrictions as global concern grows over the impact of social media on children. In news from sports, the Bangladesh Cricket Board has sacked Director Nazmul Islam.
And this after cricketers threatened to continue with their boycott until Islam resigned from his position. Well, in a space of less than 24 hours, the crisis in Bangladesh cricket has deepened. The Bangladesh Cricket Board released a statement after the players reiterated that No cricket will take place anywhere in the country till Islam resides from his position.
Now, the statement said, and I'm quoting here, following a review of recent developments and in the best interest of the organization, the BCB president has decided to release Mr. Najmul Islam from his responsibilities as chairman of the Finance Committee with immediate effect. The BCB reiterates that the interests of the cricketers remain its highest priority. The board remains fully committed to upholding the honor and dignity of all players under its jurisdiction.
Now, the entire controversy began on Wednesday when Islam was asked a question about the potential financial implications for Bangladesh should they end up not playing in the T20 World Cup in India next month. This was amid the ongoing tensions between the two countries. His response began with saying that the board would not take a hit, but added that the players would. He said, and I'm quoting here, "Why would there be any compensation? Are we asking them for the crores of taka that we are spending on them? We are spending so much money on them that they are not being able to do anything in different places. Have we got any international awards? Let us now ask them for the money back after every time they couldn't play."
Now, that naturally caused an uproar within the Bangladesh cricketing community, and the country's Players Welfare Association outrightly demanded his resignation and subsequently lived up to their promise of a boycott. Earlier, a Bangladesh Premier League match was delayed as both sets of players did not reach the venue in Dhaka. A press conference took place shortly after, where the country's top players, including T20I captain Liton Das and Mustafizur Rahman, presented a united front. Nazmul had also called former Bangladesh captain Tamim Iqbal an Indian agent earlier.
The row came at a time when Bangladesh cricket was already in a crisis. The board has requested that the team's matches of the T20 World Cup next month be shifted outside India. So far, the ICC has not agreed to their request, and talks are ongoing between the two parties. The Bangladesh Cricket Board believes that there is a security threat to them in India amid the ongoing political and diplomatic tensions between the two countries. And after BTS, another celebrated K-pop band, Blackpink, has announced its new album.
Well, K-pop juggernaut Blackpink, that is currently on a world tour, is set to make their long-awaited comeback with a new music album. According to the label YG Entertainment, the K-pop girl band will return with an album titled Deadline. The upcoming episode marks the first new album from the band in more than 3 years. The group's last offering was Born Pink in September 2022. Now, the band, composed of 4 members, Lisa, Jennie, Jisoo, and Rosé, is often regarded as the biggest girl group in the world. Notably, the band is also credited to be the ambassador of the girl crush concept in K-pop, which explores themes of self-confidence and women empowerment.
The band may not have released any new albums, but the members are busy promoting their existing music on the ongoing world tour. Blackpink will wrap up their tour with final performances in Hong Kong from January 24th to 26th. Now, for those unaware, the South Korean girl group made its debut in 2016 with the single album Square One. 3 months on, the band unveiled another album titled Square Two. Over the years, the band expanded its horizon with their albums, and this was as their debut studio album.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to World DNA for today. Lost lined up on the other side of a very short break. Keep watching Beyond World this month. Thanks for tuning in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
From Pawan Kalyan to Akshay Kumar and Tiger Shroff, know all about the Indian actors who are trained in martial arts. Find out why January is known as the dump month at box office. And meet Indian actor Sharmila Tagore as she talks about Satyajit Ray's legacy. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
This is our brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of the southern Indian state.
By blending special stories, stories of the day, breaking alerts and cultural vignettes.
From the 7 days.
The world's most powerful minds gather. Decisions that shape our future are made. From the Swiss Alps to you. Starting January 19th, WION will deep dive into the significance of what global leaders are deliberating at the World Economic Forum. The coverage will feature key roundtable discussions every day with top analysts at WION's headquarters. Stay tuned as we break down key themes from the Davos Forum to make it simple and engaging for you, only on WION.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness. From the Swiss Alps to the world, join the conversation with every idea, every debate, and every leader. Extend Davos beyond the Alps. Watch WION for accurate and insightful coverage of a spirit of dialogue in a fragmenting world. From AI governance to climate finance, WION looks to engage and make complex global